Hello everyone. Welcome to BYK Book Summary. I am Amin. Here we decode the inspiring journey, mental warfare, and empire building life lesson of the world's greatest legend. Today topics and their biggest secret are right on your screen. Let's dive in with my AI co-host.
Have you ever stopped to think about how weird it is that you can hold a smartphone in your hand, a little device with more power than all of NASA in 1969, while at the same time, billions of people on this planet still don't have something as basic as reliable electricity? It's a massive contradiction, and it gets at one of the biggest questions out there. Right, so what's the deal here? Why is the world so uneven? Is it just dumb luck, natural resources, where you are on the map? Well, according to some really sharp thinkers, like the historian David Landis and the legendary investor Charlie Munger, the answer is way, way deeper than that. They argue it's not really about economics, it's about culture, it's about the rules a society lives by, and it's about history. So where do we even begin to untangle this massive question? Well, the most obvious place to start is the map. I mean, for a very long time, the go-to explanation was that your destiny was basically determined by your geography. And there's a reason this theory was so popular. It makes a certain kind of sense. Temperate climates, like what you find in Europe, were just way better for farming than tropical regions. And on top of that, you had these crushing disease burdens in the tropics, malaria, for example, that just hammered human health and productivity. It's a pretty tough starting point. Let's take Europe, for example. Its geography gave it this incredible built-in advantage. It's crisscrossed by all these navigable rivers that flow into each other. They were basically natural superhighways. This made it super cheap and easy to move stuff around. But not just goods, and this is the important part. It also moved ideas. And that constant flow of trade and new thoughts created this engine for innovation. Now, let's contrast that with Africa. The story of its rivers is completely different. A lot of the continent's major rivers are broken up by these huge, spectacular waterfalls. And while they're absolutely stunning to look at, they're a total disaster for trade. They acted like giant roadblocks, making it almost impossible to create the kind of continent-spanning trade networks that you saw in Europe. Okay, but here's where that whole geography argument starts to break down. Just look at Japan. It's a crowded, mountainous island with almost zero natural resources. If geography was everything, Japan should have been a basket case. Instead, it became one of the most powerful economies on Earth. So clearly, we're missing something. There's another piece to this puzzle. So if it's not the land under your feet, then what is it? Well, this brings us to the really big and honestly sometimes controversial idea from David Landis. He argued that the single biggest factor, the thing that really decides a country's fate, isn't on a map at all. It's in our heads. It's culture. All right, so culture is a pretty fuzzy word. What are we actually talking about? Well, Landis points to a few specific traits. We're talking about societies that are curious, that encourage discovery, that actually reward people for coming up with new ideas, and crucially, cultures that understand the massive, massive value of educating everyone, especially women. And all of this has to be built on a foundation of stable, predictable laws. And you can actually see this play out in history, like a series of dominoes. It all starts with a huge cultural shift, the Protestant Reformation. The core idea was that everyone should be able to read the Bible for themselves. That single idea, whether you're religious or not, kicked off a mass literacy movement. That literacy then created the audience and the thinkers for the scientific revolution, which then, boom, directly ignited the Industrial Revolution. One thing led to the next. Now, to really understand the power of culture, you have to look at one of the most striking comparisons in history. While all of this was happening in Europe, this explosion of literacy and ideas, the Ottoman Empire was one of the most powerful and advanced civilizations in the world. But they made one single catastrophic cultural choice. They banned the printing press. Yeah. For almost 200 years. They blocked the single most important technology for spreading knowledge, right as it was setting Europe on fire with new ideas. Think about that. 2 centuries of deliberately choosing ignorance. It created a knowledge gap that they never, ever recovered from. Okay, so if culture is the software, the operating system of a society, it still needs hardware to run on, right? That's where institutions come into the picture. A healthy culture builds strong institutions. These are the formal rules of the game that everyone agrees to play by. And right at the core of it all is a concept that sounds kind of boring, but is the absolute bedrock of modern prosperity. It's called property rights. All it really means is that what's yours is yours. The stuff you make, the ideas you have, the money you earn, no one can just take it from you. That simple guarantee is maybe the most powerful motivator ever invented. It's what makes people work hard and build for the future. I mean, just put yourself in the shoes of an inventor. Why would you spend years of your life building some amazing new device if you know that as soon as it works, some powerful lord or king can just walk in and take it? You wouldn't. But the moment you create rules like patents that protect that invention, you unleash a tidal wave of creativity. And England is the perfect case study for this. The Industrial Revolution didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was the result of a slow, centuries-long process that arguably started way back in 1215 with the Magna Carta, the first real attempt to say, hey, even the king has to follow the rules. Over hundreds of years, that idea grew into a strong rule of law that created the stable, predictable environment where an economic explosion could finally happen. So this brings us full circle, right back to Charlie Munger. The reason he thought this stuff was so important is because it gives you a powerful mental model, a lens really, for looking at the world and understanding why some places thrive and others just don't. Munger's big lesson here is pretty simple. Don't get distracted by the superficial stuff. A country's GDP might look great for a year or two, but that's like looking at the shiny paint on a car. It tells you nothing about the engine. To really know what's going on, you have to look under the hood, at the deep underlying culture and institutions. So how do you actually use this? Well, you can think of it like a checklist. Next time you're trying to figure out a country's long-term prospects, ask yourself these questions. Is the rule of law real or just for show? Are people's ideas and inventions protected? Are women being educated and included in the economy? And does the culture itself actually value new ideas, or is it afraid of them? At the end of the day, the takeaway is pretty stark. If you want to know where a country's going to be in 30 years, don't look at last quarter's economic report. That's just noise. The real signal, the thing that will actually tell you the future, is the strength of its culture and its institutions. That's what really matters. So this grand puzzle of why some nations are rich and others are poor, it's not going to be solved on a spreadsheet. The answer is written in the stories we tell ourselves, in the rules we choose to live by, and in the lessons we've learned from history. But that leaves us with one last, really challenging question. If culture really is the key, what does that mean for the future? Can a society actually choose to change its culture and shape its own destiny? Or are we all just prisoners of our own history? And maybe even more important, what part do you and I...
So, friends, that was the complete breakdown. Make sure to take a screenshot of this growth gift, this infographic, so this lesson stay with you. If you want to learn from legends every single day, join our community. I am Amin. Always remember, read more, think deeper. Let me know in the comments who we should cover next. See you in next episode.